Good morning, everyone. This is Father Nate, missionary priest in Italy, and thanks for joining us today, February 23rd, on No Greater Delight, our podcast on Marian feasts and Marian meditations. Well, today we have, we think, two major feasts. The first is the one mentioned by Abbot Orsini, who says that on this day they celebrated Our Lady of Roches, or the Rock, as it would be, near Salamanca in Spain. An image is venerated there, which was found miraculously in the year 434 by Simon Vela, who caused a church to be built there. So, so the Simon mentioned by the Abbot Orsini was actually born in the year 1401 in Paris, France, right? The incident that Orsini says took place in 434 actually took place in 1434, but that's getting a little bit ahead. So let's talk about this guy, Simon. He was born on September 4th, 1401 in Paris to pious and wealthy parents. He grew up as a practicing Catholic. He despised money and luxury. And so that when he grew up and inherited his parents' money and property, he recognized that it could be a threat for his salvation. And so he gave everything he owned away to the church and to help the poor. When the money was gone, he went to a Franciscan monastery and just took up a position working there. Obviously, he spent a lot of time in prayer. And he was especially devoted to the Blessed Mother. Sometimes he would pray and ask if the Mother of God had anything special that, would be particularly pleasing to her. So one of these occasions, he fell asleep while praying. He was suddenly awakened when he heard a voice speak to him and said, "Simon, wake up. Be on the watch. From now on, your name will be Simon Vela. Go to Penna de Francia, for there you will find the shrine of the Blessed Virgin Mary." So Simon set out, and for 5 years, he searched all over the place trying to find this place, Penna di Francia, right? And he couldn't even find anybody who'd ever heard of it. So he had reached the point of wanting to give up. After 5 years, I don't blame him. And he had already begun working his way back home from Spain when a voice spoke to him from the darkness again, saying, "Simon, do not give up the search. Do not give up what you have begun. Persevere, and your labors will be compensated." And so he did. And so he continued walking, and he was passing through the market square in Salamanca on his way to the Church of Santiago when he observed two men who began shouting in a serious disagreement. Right? Weapons flashed, and one of the pair fell wounded at Simon's feet. The other was restrained from finishing the man off by the crowd, who held him back. Unable to reach his adversary, he shouted out, "Had I killed my enemy, I would have escaped to Penna de Francia, where no one, not even the king, could find me." It says that Simon's heart leapt for joy when he heard this. Yeah, poor guy who's, lying stabbed at his feet, but okay, be that as it may. Because it's the first time somebody had actually ever mentioned the place, right? And later, he ran into a traveling merchant, and he asked the man where he came from, and he said, "Oh, Penna de Francia." So he said, "Would you please take me there?" And he said, "No," right? All he did was point out the general direction, right? And so anyways, he keeps going. He followed that general direction. He ended up in a small town called San Martin de Castanar, and he found a church there, and after Mass, he asked if anybody knew Penna de Francia, and then somebody pointed out a hill in the far distance, right? So he got there, he was hungry, and then he found a cave, and he said, "Okay, well, where is this shrine that I'm supposed to find?" He couldn't find it, right? And so he kept digging, searching for things, blah, blah, blah. He couldn't find it, and he said, "Well, what am I even doing here?" Right? He was very, very tired. At some point, he saw Our Lady again and said, "Look, build on this hill a shrine, right? You're to begin it, and others are going to finish it." Okay? He says, "Okay." So he kept excavating, he was digging, and then he was told again, "Simon, don't undertake this task alone. Bring more people to help you off." Okay? And so he went off, and he got 5 more men to help him out. And so they were digging and digging, and they said, "Oh, we must be digging for hidden treasure." And he said, Yeah. And so he said, "It's, much, as he said, an objective worthier than worldly goods, and it was something their hearts would forever cherish." Good call, Simon. So finally, on May 19th, 1434, they removed a huge stone, and underneath it they found several smaller rocks and the image of the Blessed Virgin Mary with the Divine Child, right? Which is known as Our Lady of the Rocks, right? So, years later, the Dominicans would actually build the church, the convent, and a hospice to accommodate pilgrims, right? So that is the story of Our Lady of the Rock, What exactly, again, it has to do with today, we don't know, but that's what Abbot Orsini says. I trust his wisdom. And for the record, there's actually a number of shrines with similar names, right? There's a Madonna del Sasso in Locarno in Switzerland, where the Franciscans established a house, right? In the same country, there's also a pilgrimage chapel called Saint Mary of the High Rocks, right? And also one at Castel Santa Lia, which you have to climb up 144 steps to get there, right? But the second celebration today takes us, yes, into Passaro in Pinnavilli in Italy, where they celebrate Madonna delle Grazie, Our Lady of Grace, or also called Madonna di San Cristoforo, Our Lady of Saint Christopher. So this is the reason why it's called that is because it's a long tradition of veneration of Our Lady of Grace in the very old church of Saint Christopher, right? And the devotion is linked to an intervention of Our Lady on behalf of the city. On February 23rd, 1517, the image appeared surrounded by light above the city walls, right? And what that did is it made the Florentine militants, soldiers, who had come to destroy the city, flee. This prodigy was repeated on February 23rd, okay, it's the same day, 5 years later, 1522. And so that is what's happening in the Marian world today, February 23rd. For today's reading from the Imitation of Mary by Alexander de Rouville, we continue with Book 2, which considers Mary's virtue from Jesus' birth to his death. And today we'll consider chapter 31, Help Your Neighbor Lovingly and Gently. And again, this is a conversation between the believer and Mary. The believer. Virgin, gentlest of all God's creatures, show me how you acted toward the many ungrateful people whom Jesus taught, and for whom he worked great miracles. Thus I shall learn how to put up with the faults of my neighbor. How often you witnessed the ingratitude and betrayal Jesus received in return for the good he did. Yet your thoughts and feelings towards his enemies were, like his, only thoughts and feelings of peace. You detested sin, but you loved the sinner. It was only the offense against God that moved you deeply. You let no complaint against these foolish men pass your lips, and you even took up their cause with Jesus. You acted toward them as you act now, after so many years toward me. I am the most faithless and ungrateful of your servants, yet you treat me with kindness, and win ever new favors from God for me. Mother of the God of peace, win for me the grace never again to distress any man by unkind words. Your very name and image causes me to think mild thoughts. Obtain for me the virtue of gentleness and the spirit of peace, so that I may merit the glorious title of Child of God. Mary. Yes, my child, I will pray for you, but you must correspond to the grace I obtain for you from the Lord. Grace does not do away with difficulties. It only helps us bear them. I know your neighbor is often a burden to you because of his moods and silly ideas and strange behavior. But if you are obedient to grace, it will teach you to overcome your repugnance and win great merit. The occasions for practicing heroic virtue did not come every day even to the saints. Yet because they patiently put up with the faults of their neighbors, each day added a new luster to their crown. A Christian's life is a life of sacrifices, and a man's neighbor with his faults is constantly giving occasion for multiplying such sacrifices. All men sin many times. They ought therefore make of us the means they have of expiating their sins. One of the most effective of these means is to put up with one's neighbor in a spirit of penance. In addition, my child, every man has his faults. The most perfect man is simply the one who has fewer defects than anyone else. You will find defects in your brothers, and they in you. Be not one of those who think they have no defects, and by that very fact have the greatest defect of all. Your brothers put up with you as you are. Put up with them as they are. In bearing with your neighbor, show the patience he needs in bearing with you, and with the defects he cannot but observe in you. You have long been wearing yourself out trying to improve yourself, but your efforts until now have seen little success. How then can you claim to correct those of others as you wish? All of your complaints at the annoyances you must put up with from certain people who displease you are not helpful, and certainly will not bring about their correction. In dealing with such annoyances, the only course of action for you is to ask Jesus to help you in drawing profit from them, in testing yourself, and in gaining more solid virtue.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed our Marian podcast. As St. John Paul II teaches us, from Mary we learn to love Christ, her Son, the Son of God. Through her intercession, may we grow ever closer to Him. We encourage you to share this with a loved one or friend and help spread our devotion to Mary. Thank you, and God bless.